There's a significant development in the ongoing battle to eliminate suppressors and short-barreled rifles from NFA regulations across the country. 15 states have recently stepped forward to support the complete removal of these remaining NFA restrictions, though the Trump administration's Department of Justice appears to be implementing delay tactics in this litigation. Let me break down what's unfolding in this crucial legal fight. Before we proceed, if you'd like to support this channel, the simplest method is subscribing. Also, verify that YouTube hasn't automatically unsubscribed you. They frequently do this, particularly to Second Amendment channels. We need to address what's currently transpiring following the Hearing Protection Act and Short Act not passing in their complete forms through H.R. 1, the comprehensive legislative package. If you've been following along here, you know that H.R. 1 did pass, though we only secured the NFA tax reduction. Beginning next year under the new legislation, the NFA tax has dropped from $200 per item all the way down to $0. Essentially, the monetary tax on these items no longer exists. In response to this change, multiple Second Amendment organizations have moved forward to complete what was started and eliminate all remaining NFA restrictions on items like SBRs, suppressors, AOWs, short-barreled shotguns, and other items that now carry no tax burden. Gun Owners of America, Free Range American Company, Silencer Shop, Palmetto State Armory, and additional companies have united to file litigation against the ATF. Now, 15 states have also joined this lawsuit as named plaintiffs supporting the termination of all remaining ATF restrictions on these items. These states include Texas, Alaska, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Montana, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming. In this litigation filed by the Second Amendment organizations, these companies and the 15 states, their argument is straightforward. Since items like suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs are no longer subject to taxation, there's no longer a constitutional foundation for continued regulation of these items under the NFA. To summarize, GAOA and the other plaintiffs are requesting that the court determine that the NFA's registration and transfer requirements concerning the now untaxed items exceed Congress's enumerated constitutional powers. Additionally, they're asking the court to prohibit all ATF employees, agents, and related agencies and their personnel from implementing or enforcing the NFA against these now untaxed firearms. That's the objective of this new lawsuit responding to the NFA tax modification that recently passed in the comprehensive legislative package. The plaintiffs have also submitted a motion for summary judgment to resolve this case expeditiously rather than dragging it out. What this essentially means is that both the plaintiffs and the ATF are signaling to the court that they intend to file cross motions for summary judgment and want to resolve this dispute without proceeding to a full trial. They believe the court can examine the record without oral arguments or similar proceedings, that the court can review the materials and issue a ruling immediately. However, the ATF and Trump DOJ keep attempting to delay this case as long as possible. The Trump DOJ and ATF's initial attempt to stall this challenge centered around the government shutdown. They claimed that due to the shutdown, they lacked funding and couldn't assign attorneys to file their response brief, requesting essentially an indefinite postponement until the shutdown concluded. Upon reviewing that motion, the court ultimately denied the indefinite case delay related to the shutdown. The judge stated that through a court order, the DOJ could be required to respond to this case. However, the judge acknowledged that given the abbreviated time frame, the lack of funding, and the need to assign attorneys, he granted them one additional week to file their response. So last week was the deadline for the Trump DOJ to respond to this case. As that date neared, the Trump DOJ returned to the court seeking another delay and additional time to respond to this case. In their new request, they argued that even with the court order, the DOJ couldn't locate the workforce within the organization to work on and file this brief. The Trump DOJ's request states, defendants respectfully request a one-week extension of their deadline to oppose plaintiff's motion for summary judgment and cross-move for summary judgment, currently due on November 13, 2025. For reasons already explained regarding the lapse in Department of Justice appropriations, undersigned counsel has been expected to work on a response to plaintiffs' lengthy motion for summary judgment and defendants' cross motion for summary judgment only since October 30th, when the court denied defendants' motion to stay proceedings. Since then, defendants have experienced staffing unavailability due to the continued lapse in appropriations. And counsel for the defendants, the DOJ, have been managing other ongoing emergency litigation. Both circumstances have impacted defendants' ability to draft their opening brief by the November 13th deadline. Defendants therefore request the court extend the time and deadline for 1 week until October 20th, 2020. Fortunately for the Trump DOJ, Judge Hendricks agreed to grant them 1 additional week to respond to that motion for summary judgment. Now they have 1 more week and must file that response by mid-next week, I believe Wednesday. I wouldn't be shocked if next week, as that date approaches once again, the Trump DOJ returns to the judge, attempting to secure even more time, because that appears to be their pattern. They're trying to delay this as much as possible. Perhaps they don't want to respond as quickly as possible. Maybe they're determining how they want to handle this case. But I also think a significant part of this is that the Trump DOJ, AG Bondi, and the ATF have received substantial criticism because of their current position on the NFA. They continue defending the NFA as constitutional and not a Second Amendment violation. So perhaps they're navigating how they want to respond to this case. Ultimately, what this signifies for this NFA litigation is that the Second Amendment organizations are attempting to resolve this lawsuit quickly, but the Trump ATF is trying to delay this as long as possible. They keep seeking extensions on their response, simply attempting to stay and stall this case. The plaintiffs believe that the NFA's remaining restrictions should automatically fall now because the remaining SBR and silencer restrictions depend on the NFA being a tax. However, since there's now a $0 tax on those items, the states and these organizations contend that all these remaining restrictions must now be found invalid by the courts. It will be fascinating to see how the Trump ATF ultimately responds to this challenge once they finally file those briefs, once they actually meet that deadline. It will be interesting to see their arguments, but I suspect the Trump DOJ will continue defending the NFA. They've already done this in multiple cases, in district courts, circuit courts, even in the Supreme Court. They continue defending the NFA as a constitutional restriction that allows them to place these types of restrictions on these items. Again, we'll see how the Trump DOJ responds to this. But currently, it appears they're attempting to delay the case, perhaps postpone that response, but ultimately, I believe they're still going to attempt to defend the NFA. There are numerous moving pieces right now in the NFA battles to eliminate the remaining restrictions. Cases are currently in district courts, circuit courts, and also before the Supreme Court. And the Trump DOJ has established this track record currently when it comes to the NFA. They're defending it and want to maintain it despite the fact that there's a $0 tax on these items. We'll see how this unfolds next week once that brief is due. As more information becomes available and developments occur, I'll keep you informed. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, the best way to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All those actions help drive the algorithm. Also, you can check out one of these 2 videos on your screen that the YouTube algorithm suggests you'll find helpful. You can watch those if you'd like. But as always, thank you so much for all your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.